Welcome to Bubble Tea Time, where we spill the tea on last week's games and set the table for this week's. I'm your host, Adam, aka Digital Feeling, joined once again by our analyst. We have one lesson this week, but still our wonderful analysts, Brian, aka Deco Dunu, and Daniel, aka Dance, have joined us once again. What's going on, guys?
Uh,
Woo!
Once again, my computer decides to not cooperate with camera, so here we are.
Not the worst, not the worst. But thank you all so much for joining us again for an exciting week and an exciting coming week. We're also joined by Angela Lee, aka Asian Problems. Welcome, Angela.
Hi.
Very awesome. We're gonna go straight into our game reviews, which is gonna be the first one, which I thought was an absolute banger. Good Boys versus Second Breakfast. Um, let's just go straight into the clip to kind of set up the amazingness of this.
Yeah, so this was a 2-1 series in favor of Second Breakfast. And honestly, Misa and Nick stepped up this game to basically bring their team to the next round in playoffs. And particularly Yo Betty White just played incredibly well on Ari in the 2 winning games.
This isn't as much of a second breakfast highlight as it is a GB highlight, though.
Yes.
With Steven getting Karasaki Ace getting a quadra kill off the back of a botched engagement. I think this play was mostly, honestly, vid the mid. His ult got a ton of bounces inside of a Kindred ult, and then the last bounce and the explosion circles actually happened outside the Kindred ult, so it kind of got them super low for Steven to run in and clean up. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, and as the game went on further and further, the Nasus just kind of got bigger and bigger in the side lane, and
Yeah.
was able to run it down.
One of the biggest factors was in the last team fight, Mayo went in and pretty much two-shot Vid the mid, and so he never even got a chance to ult the enemy team. But overall, this series was very, very close.
Yeah, I agree.
Couple of highlight things. First off, being I think pretty much everyone showed their best. Renekton, Mayo doing absolutely wonderful. But really, I think the highlight is for me is Yo Betty White. Really being patient on certain setups. And being able to just get everything that he can off the opposite team from his team setup. We saw that there was a lot of times where Yo Betty White would wait for his team to set up. They would get an engage, and then he would charm, flash, or flash charm, and then use his Q to just chunk him down, and then he would chase the person down while his team resets after getting chunked, or uh, or he would like come back and just escape based on the Ari, which he got for not the first and the last game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Additionally, with the series, you saw Karasaki Ace swap to bot lane just to try and bully the Second Breakfast bot lane and try to carry through there.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty interesting move, and potentially, honestly, a questionable one. I think the first game, the bot lane of GB already kind of I think they flame horizoned the bot lane of SB even without Steven in the bot lane. And yeah, definitely there was probably a big difference there in terms of like Steven did have some carry potential in the bot lane. Like the second game he did carry, but a part of me is thinking hey, that differential that we saw in the second game or the third game where Mayo on Nasus was up I don't know 100 something CS. On Panty Puma in the top lane, and Panty Puma is playing off role and a champion that he doesn't play most of the time. Um, something tells me hey, I think swapping to the bot lane is probably a panic move. It was something that you can't, for me, you can't really be discouraged after one game. You lose the first game, sure. Um, maybe your allowed pick didn't work out, or maybe your teammates didn't have the greatest lane phase of their lives. But I think audibling like they did and totally swapping out lanes. I don't know if that did them more good than it did like hurt them.
To be fair, they did win when the first game when Steven swapped.
Yeah, I do think they did. I mean, like they definitely won that game, but I think part of it was like the second game they got, or the third game they got a lot of comfort on like the mid laner and stuff like that. Like the second game, Nick was stuck on Malzahar and really didn't have any impact.
Mhm.
And the third game he had Ari instead, and like I think like I don't want to be a results based like analyst and say like, hey, like yeah, they won the second game, it was the right move, and maybe like the third game loss was just kind of like the expected result of things. Like maybe they have a 0% chance of winning if Steven plays top, and like a 50% chance of winning if Steven plays bot. Like I don't think it works like that.
Mm.
I think that the mistakes they made in the first game were intrinsic to like how they drafted, how many comfort picks they let go, and I think the second game they actually had a much smoother draft than they did in the first or the third games, and that was probably a big reason. Like hindering Nick with his champion pool and cutting him down was probably a big reason they won that game.
Just as a reminder for the viewers, before we get on to the next game, to send us your Twitch questions, not only for your analyst desk, but for Angela, um, for after the predictions. Let's go on to the next game, which is the Student Council versus Deep Dive, which Deep Dive has a new brand.
Yes, the beast has awakened, as I like to say. And they're looking to make a deep run in the playoffs with their last win.
Let's take a look at the clip for this game. Or these games, the series.
Yeah. I want to say that the second game was really, really close. TSC was pushed onto the fight for their playoffs, and they made really good plays. But I think Deep Dive in the end had a deeper tank.
Yeah, big Cho'Gath Q there to get two and the knock up, and then it was a pretty close fight. Digital Feeling got, or Mr. Adam got a couple kills here. Has to burn a flash, and then it's him and Mordekaiser in the Death Realm. Yeah, not gonna win that anytime soon. Is the Tristana.
Angela, since you're here, how did you feel about that series, especially after coming in third for the regular season?
I think we did pretty well overall. I think we just got picked off a lot, and Lucia got pretty strong later on in the game, and there was something we could do about that as the game progressed. And he just kept farming and farming, getting more items over everybody in general. And I think it was a little bit. It's harder to pick off a Lucian who has a tank front line, who can take off the carries and stuff.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a draft difference in a lot of those games. Like the first game was kind of like honestly an unwinnable draft. It looked like TSC kind of like had their eyes set on a specific comp. Like we're gonna dive with this and like do all that, and then it looked like Deep Dive kind of took those picks at face value, said, hey, like this looks like they're going to do a dive comp. Let's make this as hard as we feasibly can for them, and like picked a comp that was like almost a total counter. And so like I think as we were loading in, we were like, wow, this game one is unwinnable for TSC unless they get like really far ahead, unless they like break the game plan that's in front of them. And like unfortunately, like that's pretty hard to do. Getting a lead where your comp doesn't matter anymore, like um yeah, it's a really difficult task to ask of any team at any level. And so yeah, I think both teams played really well. Like Deep Dive is obviously like definitely on the upturn. But I think some of the characteristic things that we've seen like Deep Dive improve on as they like improve and like continue their run through playoffs is just like the ability to draft better. Or maybe even like draft the same but play drafts differently and like not have them go just like one direction. It looked like their game one drafts and game two drafts too. Um, were more flexible than their drafts in the past, where we just draft a bunch of tanks plus Ezreal or something like that. It just looked like they saw what the other team was picking and then started adapting on the fly a lot better than they had in their regular season matches.
From both these games, we saw TSC be taken over by Deep Dive, and then Second Breakfast taking over the good boys. Uh, do the regular season like standings? Do you consider those in your predictions before we get into them, or is playoffs just such a different beast with the best of three that you just kind of push everything out from the last, the regular season and just consider what you think for the best of three games?
I mean, it's definitely different. Like, we've never had a first place regular season team win the whole thing, through like 6 seasons, or 5 seasons. So, regular season definitely isn't everything. And I think like THD hasn't played for a while. Our game is probably scheduled for like the 6th. That's like, I don't know, a long time from now. The last time we had a BTL game was, I don't even know, like almost a month ago now.
Yeah.
So tons of things can change. And like that's probably a factor. Like it um happened last season with, I can't remember, like TSM and what is the other team? I can't remember. Fuck. I don't know. Whatever. The one that was green with Alki on it and stuff like that. Some teams just get iced, and like that's kind of difficult. Like where our THD is specifically trying to like scrim and practice to make sure we don't get iced, but it's definitely a possibility. Like we haven't had a competitive game in a while, so who knows? Like we might just be bad now that we come back. So with that said, like in my predictions, like I think I tried to switch one in the last second, but Elena may not have switched in the graphic. But I think AR might run into the same thing. Like I don't know the last time they practiced, but they definitely haven't played a competitive game in a while. So um, yeah, unlike SB, who's coming off of like a pretty high octane series, they're probably amped and good to go. Like there's definitely a difference.
Very awesome, Dan's. Let's have the return of for the third week, and I think probably a permanent part of our broadcast from here on out. Some dance stats.
So to highlight today's dance stats, we've got Man and Yo Betty White, Second Breakfast NAR being a highlight series to watch this week. And these are regular season stats because Man has not played a playoff game. And those are also Yo Betty White's regular season stats, and they're fairly close, aside from KDA. And one of the biggest things to highlight is that Nick might look like the underdog here, but his playoff series, he stepped up to a big degree, almost doubling his damage per minute, as well as overall doubling his KDA. I think Yo Betty White is going to be a key player for this upcoming series, and Man's better be ready to tackle that problem.
Yeah, Nick's been a huge factor. Misa's also been a huge factor. Like those are the two X factors for SB. So AR should come ready to play and make sure like they have a plan to deal with the two of them, because the two of them have been surprising people. Like in the GP series, they both went off in each game that they won. And so yeah, like that's what they'll try to do and replicate it. And Mayo is always going to be a threat too in the top side if he gets going. So yeah, I think SB matches up pretty well against AR, and we'll see how that series plays out. Even if AR come in as like the regular season favorites. And I think one interesting stat that isn't on that graphic that I want to point out, because it's kind of always like this. Or actually, it's not like this season, but last season the CS per minute stat, Nick actually dominated the CS per minute stat in the last season. He like. I think it was like me and him for first and second, like the whole season down. And this season's actually a little bit different. Like he's fallen like pretty far down like the list for like CS per minute. In the regular season, he finished with like a 5 point. Where is it?
5.7.
Yeah, 5.7 or so CS per minute compared to like Mayan here. His like actually Mayan's isn't super high either. It's like 5.86. But then some of the league leaders like Jack Limestone is sitting at like 7.88, and I'm sitting at like 7.78. And so like they haven't been like CSing super well. But then if you look at like the playoff stats, like he's been like really getting his groove a lot better. Like he's been CSing better. He's like jumped to like 6 point something, and like he's getting himself in the game, getting himself like more personal strength. And I think like a big part for this game is like Nick has been able in the past to like take his time and then try to snowball lanes later, or like take his time and try to carry later. But I don't think he's been really like gaining a lot of personal strength. But in the playoffs, he's been like, I don't know, like 14-1 in some of these games and stuff like that. He's been getting a lot of personal strength and playing through himself. So I think we should expect to see him try to replicate that against AR.
Well, with that, let's go on to our predictions with AR versus Second Breakfast with a bit of a split here. Let's go ahead and start off with our guest Angela. Why do you think that AR is going to overtake Second Breakfast, even though they had a pretty decisive victory? Well, not super decisive, but it was pretty good.
I think the bot lane, there's going to be a difference in AD carry and support. And I think overall, with me and I think they'll win off of that. I just think they have a stronger bot lane, and they will definitely win off of from gold and damage. Yeah.
I think the AR SB series will be really close. I'm actually fluctuating on it. I think I'm gonna stay by the AR pick as is the graphic, I guess. I think AR has looked really dominant in the regular season. On the other hand, like us, they're probably being iced out a bit. I can already tell like our team's getting sloppy, and I'm sure like theirs isn't as clean as they were in the regular season right now. Um, that's one reason. I also think like AR has a really big advantage in the bot lane. So I agree with Angela on that for sure. But I think Misa has hit a supernova level that like they didn't face in the regular season. Like Misa is really on a tear, and then also Nick is also pretty much on a tear too. And I think like those are going to be hard matchups for them to deal with. Sopa looked really strong in the start of the regular season, looked a little weaker as the season went on. I think like Misa had the opposite arc. I think SB has some claws into this one too. And if they can really like sharpen those talons and feast on like where AR could be weak, which I think is like their lack of proactivity. I think SB is probably a more aggressive, proactive team, and AR is a lot more stable. You know, it only takes a couple games for SB to like a couple fights to like break open a game with like a really aggressive play. Um, yeah, so I think they have a chance. But on the other hand, I think for me, AR after their like regular season run, I think for me they're the favorites. It is one thing to be volatile and really proactive like SB, but then another thing to take that like replicate it in a best of 3 and then like go all the way. So I think it would be I think it's like an AR favorite series, but only like a 55-45 kind of favor, maybe 60-40.
And Dan's, what makes you think that Second Breakfast is going to take it over Acid Rabbits?
Misa, straight up. I think Misa's gonna destroy Sopa in the jungle and basically make plays on map. You saw it in the series, even in the loss as Kindred. He was a huge factor in that game, despite his team being behind. And I can see him just taking over completely.
I definitely agree with that. I think that Misa is doing just phenomenal. But I'm really excited for what Yo Betty White has in store. I was absolutely impressed with his play, like I said before. But getting the right champions onto them is so important. With Ari being one of them, getting Fire Knight 19 on Ash or somebody who can support the team versus try to carry. Seems to be a big factor to let the jungler do what they need to do and Mayo up top do what they need to do. But on the other hand, Alki is no slouch. You have like so many problems with him trying to take control of that bot lane. I feel like it's going to be so difficult for Misa to make any plays down top. So I think it's going to be a top centered game.
I mean, if somebody's going to make it bot centric, I think it's going to be Barry Allen.
Yeah, I think Barry Allen controls the tempo in that lane, for sure. And I do think he's been proactive. But on the same token, like I haven't really noticed him as much in like the last couple series, or like games they had in the regular season when they played MBB. I think that the bot lane of AR was pretty fangless, to be honest. And like I think like we'll see where that goes. I think this series, however, the bot difference is pretty gigantic. Against SB, like I don't think SB can contest to the AR bot lane, and like if there's a real pivot point, that should be where it comes like naturally. And it's up to Misa to decide what to do about it. Like, do you try to balance that lane, or do you try to like get your advantages somewhere else? And in the past couple games, like he's opted for the latter. He's opted for getting his mid laner snowballing, his top laner snowballing. I think we'll see something similar to that too.
Mm, should be an exciting game. Very excited to see. Let's go on to the next game. THD versus MBS. Unfortunately, we don't have the only defender for Nutter Butter Scudlers, which would normally be Colin. Would somebody like to take up the mantle?
Pass.
Oh, fair,
Meh.
fair enough. Considering I will try. Nutter Butter Scudlers are, I think, on the uptick. Um, I thought this says a lot, and I don't know if the analysts or Angela, if you want to weigh in on this. I think it says a lot that uh, AR Aster Rabbits did not choose them as their opponent, because you would normally think that the top team's going to choose the weaker or the not as experienced team uh, to fight. So it's obviously giving some credit to Nutter Butter Scuttlers. Am I correct in this?
I mean, I think NBS is like a lot stronger than SB. From what we've seen. So like we expected AR to pick SB. I don't think anybody was surprised by that. Um, and yeah, I think NBS is a pretty strong team. They're like well rounded after their addition of a player, and then like lane swaps. They're a lot more well rounded than they were in the past. And they don't really have any like glaring holes anymore. I think they should be considered, rightfully so, as like championship contenders. Straight up. So yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a hard series for us. We haven't played in a while, and we're getting back into it, and like as a first opponent for a team that is getting back into it, like NBS is gonna be really hard. Um, yeah, But that said, I think like we have some pedigree, and we were able to like snowball games out of control like pretty quickly. We have the fastest game times of the regular season. Like we're hoping to be able to translate that into a win in playoffs against NBS too. And like a lot of their games have been pretty testy against TSC. They had a 2-1 series that like went pretty down to the wire. We're just hoping to really not entertain that whatsoever, and just end the game as fast as we can.
All right. Um, let's go on and go ahead and go to the Good Boys versus Milwaukee Bucks, baby, which is another division. With Milwaukee Bucks getting 3 and Good Boys getting 2. Angela, would you like to explain why you chose the Good Boys in this bit?
I think between the Good Boys and Milwaukee Bucks, I think the teams are pretty close. Um, I think between I did choose Good Boys just because I think I noticed that with Milwaukee Bucks that once the bot lane gets behind, they kind of I guess hold back until mid or late game. So I feel like the Good Boys will see that and try to win off of that.
That's fair. I don't think the Bucks are gonna let a very, very unlucky split push game happen again.
Yeah.
I think they've learned their lesson from that, and they are looking to basically say that was a fluke. We should have won that game in the regular season. We should have been in the winners bracket, and here's why.
Yeah, I think the Bucks are looking really strong. They absolutely crushed their first round matchup against XO. And like I think they're just gonna try to continue that momentum into the GP series. I think GP against SB looked like a team that didn't have direction. They didn't know what they wanted to accomplish really. They didn't know like what compositions they wanted to put their players into to accomplish those goals. They just looked lost. Like they were gonna try to get somebody strong and have them carry the game. Like that was like the extent of their planning, and I don't think that's going to be enough to beat MBB. MBB is a much stronger team than the record suggests right now, and like every single game they've played in the regular season and in playoffs has been either them crushing or them playing really close, and then like maybe losing to like bad end game decisions or something like that. And I think they've I have faith that they fix a lot of those up. And in that sense, like Like there's no world where the MBB bot lane loses against GB, and I think both of them are starting to get like on the uptick again. And if Elena and Nick Mead can really like go the distance, I think that team is really hard to stop. And I don't really think like even the other players like Joe and Shry and stuff like that. Nobody's a whole. They all play their own roles, and in the late game, if Elena can corral them to being like a single unit, that team becomes a wrecking ball. So I'm pretty convinced. I think this is a lot less close than the SBAR game, to be honest, or a series, to be honest, and less close than ours too. THD NBS I think will be closer than this series.
Very awesome. These should be 3 exciting series, best of 3s. We're gonna go ahead and go on to our questions because this week we have a ton, boys. So
Hey.
let's start off with one for Angela. How many Kirby's do you have on that wall, and which one's your favorite?
I think okay, not all of it is on the bookcase, but I think I have like 32 right now.
Hmm.
And my favorite one is the Link one. There's a
Solid
Kirby on
choice.
there that has like the Kirby or the Link hat and then the sword on the back.
Cute. From Jack Limestone, matchup you're most hoping happens down the line in playoffs.
All right, I'll take that one first. I want to go THD SB. I want a brother grudge match.
Yeah, I mean that'd be pretty nice. I can get behind that. I don't really want to be moving Elena's desk to the other room and have my voice bleed over, but I do want to see THD versus MBB like in the finals or whatever. I think we've been scrim partners and like sharing so many scrims like this whole time that a match like that where we have to like whip up stuff that neither of us have seen because we've both seen like each other's strats for like I don't know the entirety of the regular season playoffs or whatever. It'll be pretty weird. It'll be like reminiscent of like the Samsung Blue, Samsung White series and like season 4 worlds where they just like White whipped out stuff that Blue had never even seen before in any of their scrims because they're scrim partners and they just had to have stuff in the back pocket. I think that series could be reminiscent of that.
From Adam, now that Kate is dead, see patch notes. Who do you think would be the highest prio ADCs this week? Let's start off with Angela.
I think Ash. Ash is always strong. She has the slow. She has the stuns. She has the ability to kite. Also Lucian. I think Lucian's really strong as an AD carry, as we saw from several past games.
I mean, one, I don't know if Kate is dead necessarily. I don't think she's as strong as she was. I mean, before the nerfs hit her. I think she's still playable. I don't think she's as like oppressive as she was. So like there are other picks like C Worlds play-ins where Twitch is a big pick and stuff like that. There are other picks that have risen in popularity because of Caitlyn's like somewhat untimely demise. I think at the pro level like what she offers is like a ton of like lane bullying, which is something that pros can mitigate to a certain extent as well, and like play Twitch or Con and mitigate it down. At our level, I think Kate offers a little bit more than that too. She offers like safety and burst from range, and a lot of teams have utilized that. Like NBS has utilized that to like have Limsh play like mega backline and then just like nuke people from downtown. So I think she's still strong at our level. And like Angela said, Ash is still a top tier pick. The nerfs were pretty minor on her, to be honest, and like they're enough to let picks like Twitch get in the meta, but not enough to remove Ash from the meta. I think Senna is still a good pick. Yeah, when it comes to BTL though, like I mean, Ash is going to be the top tier one that people play. All the BTL playoff teams play Ash, or most of them at least, and like I don't think that's going to change. So yeah, she'll still be contested. What I'm most curious about is if Twitch will be contested. He's a really strong pick right now, because a lot of the lane bullies have like gone down in power. But one, I don't know how many people have practice on him. Two, I don't know if they really know how to build comps around him because he's a very singular, unique AD carry. And three, I just don't know if people like have like Twitch has to your team has to really accommodate for not just like compositionally but like play wise like how Twitch plays. Like Some Twitch players might get baited into playing backline and stuff like that. That's not how you play Twitch. You have to be really aggressive. You want to be R-ing in people's faces. It's just difficult for AD carries to like really get in that mindset. So I think like as the playoffs go on, we might see a team or two pick up Twitch, and I'm really curious to see how that'll do.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the Twitch pick. I think I expect to see a little more Jin.
Oh yeah, Jin's big. Yeah, I think
And
you're right.
that's the only other pick that I would add.
From Wired, what teams will pull out Samira in week 3, and who do you think can? Not do you think he will? Who do you think can pull off Samira, who's been called affectionately, unaffectionately, AD Katarina?
I mean, there's no guarantee that it's going to be an AD or anything either. Samir looks to be like relatively flexible right now, and we'll see as the nerfs settle in and stuff like that if she can solo lane effectively. And if she can solo lane effectively, like I don't know, it depends. Does she become like Lucian level? It depends on how strong her lane is. And if it's strong enough to survive in a solo lane, I think this answer could be expanded to like a decent amount of people. Like I'll try her, and like my bot lane will try her, and I'm sure like deep dive if they go through, we'll be giving her a shot. Like, yeah, I think the most likely probably like deep dive and MBB, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think the only other person I could consider that they would throw down, it would be Lynch.
Yeah, potentially.
I think Alki would possibly play her. I think
Yeah,
it would fit into
Alki's an
his play
interesting one.
style. Yeah.
So
Well,
what?
I
Alki's an
think
interesting one because I don't think it does fit into his play style.
I
But
think
I
it
think
does
he'll
what
try.
Barry Allen. What Barry
Yeah.
Allen as a support for someone engaged, I think that's someone that would play well into Samira.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Barry Allen plays like basically enablers. Yeah, I think that's fair.
And let's see. And then last, real quick, who is the MVP for playoffs so far, in your opinion?
Playoff so far.
Aurochs, Frostheart.
It's a pretty good pick, actually.
I can get behind that. I mean, Aurochs. I mean, if you count one series, it's weird because Deep Dive has more series than the other teams. But if you count one series, then Yo Betty White maybe on SP as well. But yeah, Aurochs and Lil Muffin on that team really popped off in the Deep Dive thing. I think Aurochs is probably my pick too.
Yeah, I would agree.
He's been insane on weak side. There's not many players that can make weak side, not just weak side, but turn it and find leads. So he's played well from behind too. I think Aurochs is definitely a good pick here.
I probably would go with either Aurochs. I think Aurochs just played his just hecking brains out last time he played. But I think overall I would probably give it to Yo Betty White just for the 2 games that he played, and I thought he was just dominating so well. I think that's a fair choice.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, if Renekton did really great both games, I'd probably give it to Mayo. I thought he just really did so well in one game, but the other games he some goofs.
I
A
still
little bit
find
of
it funny
goofs.
that you call him Renekton, even though he only played Renekton one game, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been on certain channels, you would know why.
Yeah. I mean, his Nasus game definitely popped off in that game too. He had a gigantic lane lead on Nasus, and like that's big. So
I did want to ask you before we go into our standings, how do you feel about Mayo getting on Nasus, where he's usually on a very particularly like dive in, pop off, but he choosing someone that's a little bit more later game seems a little bit odd for his style, doesn't it?
maybe in the early game Nasus isn't super scrappy, but like later you saw Mayo play Mayo things. Like in team fights, he would just run wither somebody and try to hit backline. In side lanes, he would just take a bunch of fights. So like I think the trademark like Mayo aggression was still there, even on a pick that wasn't traditionally aggressive in the early stages of the game.
Very awesome. Thank you all for the questions. Honestly, this week we had a ton. Please, for the coming weeks, toss even more out. We're gonna try to get to as many of them as possible.
I have a question for y'all. Just out of my curiosity, how much do you guys think like Worlds meta stuff will affect BTL? Because like clearly they're two separate levels of play. Worlds team might be able to pull off like I don't know Lily Illusion or whatever better than like a BTL team would, for sure. So like with that said, like some of the things that we see in like play like in the past, like when Akali was really big and Aurelia was really big, we wouldn't see those things in PTL necessarily, but we'd definitely see them like in pro play. How much do you think like this Worlds meta that's shaping up, which we saw a preview of in the end of like the season for all these teams regionally, like with Lucian Evelyn already being really big in playoffs for like LPL, etc. How much of this Worlds meta do you think will we see reflected in BTL?
I think we'll see a couple of the jungle picks, particularly Evelyn, just because it fits a couple of players' playstyles. I don't think the bot lane will be as influenced,
hmm
but the support picks I think will be.
I think only certain teams can have the flexibility for that. I would say that most teams won't be influenced. I think they're going to just play their game until the end of the season, just because they've just been playing that style for so long, and they're not as. I don't think they're going to dedicate as much time to practicing to allow them to play like a new style, unless we just have like such long times between the games that it does give them time. But I just can't imagine like a team like Deep Dive or Second Breakfast not playing to the comps they've already played to. Uh, Especially Second Breakfast. I think THG could do it, but I don't. They try some weird stuff out, um, which is great. I don't know about AR scrims, and I don't know how much they practice. They have the skill cap to do it, but I don't know if they particularly would. Maybe Alki would choose Twitch or something like that, but it just doesn't feel like it. I don't think Worlds has such a big effect. And I actually don't know how many people in the BTL watch Worlds as heavily as like maybe you like 4+ like Colin, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of us are watching Worlds now, or at least like reruns or highlights when the day's up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I do agree that some things aren't gonna have the bleed over. Like people aren't gonna be like, oh shit, I'm gonna practice Twitch now, or I'm gonna practice Lilia now, or something like that. But yeah, I think there should be some effect. Like I think we'll start seeing like some of these big picks in Worlds and stuff like that. I think we should start seeing some bleed over. Dan mentioned Evelyn. That's something that could be seeing some bleed over. And yeah, it still kind of blows my mind that nobody's been trying to play Lilia. Like she is mechanically intensive compared to a lot of the other like jungle pool, but um, I don't know. She's just kind of like the strongest champion in the
She's
game. It's
so
kind of mind
annoying.
blowing. Kind of mind blowing that nobody's been playing her, but yeah, like I think like we'll see some of that stuff. I just don't know how much.
I
Are
will say I am one of those people that isn't watching Worlds,
Mhm.
but I think Evelyn is just a strong jungler, like in general, and I feel
For
like
sure.
I can't see Soba picking up Evelyn and learning her. Um, Whether he plays her, I wouldn't know for sure. But I think it's definitely something he would try to pick up, and if it
Mhm.
works with his team, he would play it.
That's fair.
Same thing with Alki. I feel like with Twitch, if it has potential with the synergy around his team, I think he would be able to pick it up as well.
Mhm.
with that, let's go ahead and go to our standings and see how they're kind of shaking up. We see that that are better scuttlers.
This is the old graphic, so.
Yeah, this is the older graphic. Anyways, uh, already discussed it. Uh, SB going on ahead.
Oh, new bracket.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
hey, another better scuttlers going on ahead. We have this new bracket on top: AR versus SB, THC versus NBS, and then deep dive on their legacy. Trying to get to the end game to fulfill the prophecy. So it should be looking good. Let's go ahead and go on to our schedule, which is going to be on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific. These are all in Pacific. It's going to be Good Boys versus Milwaukee Bucks, baby. And then we have two to be announced games, which is going to be AR versus Second Breakfast.
Which got
I think-
announced just earlier today.
Yeah, I believe that they just announced it, which is going to be on Thursday, 10/2 at 9 p.m. PST. Make sure to check that out. And THD and MBS, y'all still don't have a time, correct?
We are looking to be on the 6th.
Looking to be on 6th, so a little bit later in the week.
Yeah.
Oh, you said Thursday 10/2. Is that Friday 10/2 or Thursday 10/1?
That's a good question because it says that.
Awkward.
10/1.
All right, 10/1.
Thank you, Alki, for that correction. But should be some exciting games. They're a little bit more spread out. It seems like the playoff season's a little more scarce in between games, but a lot more packed in, especially with 2 to 3 games per. Guys, real quick, let's what's your most anticipated games?
Mm,
Angela should hit this one. You're not in the game,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think honestly THD and MBS. I think that's my most
Ooh.
anticipated.
Hell yeah. If we
I
can't pick
think-
our team, I don't know. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you can
I
pick your
think
team.
with I just think MBS got a lot stronger, and it will be a close game, like Brian said earlier.
mm,
I don't know. I'd pick the honestly, I wanted to see GB MBB. It's the one with the highest stakes. Like it's an elimination match. I want to see who goes through and then whose season comes to an end. So I think that should be pretty exciting. And like, even though I said I don't think it'll be as close as the other two, that doesn't mean it won't be contested. And I still think either team has a really good shot to win. So I think it'll be a good one to watch for sure.
I would say I want to see ARSB because the loser has to face the prophecy in the losers bracket, and that's a scary thought.
I'm also gonna be for AR versus SB. I really want, like, I feel like Second Breakfast is really scrappy, like, and I want them to go into the winners bracket for finals. I think that would just be an amazing turnaround. Maybe like a really unexpected ending to all this would be Second Breakfast versus Deep Dive, right? So like I'm kind of in this like dream fugue state of hope. So I'm really excited to see how it works out. But AR is like no pushover. So I think that the Second Breakfast has a huge uphill battle to fight in this next matchups. But with that, Twitch, anyone who's watching the VODs, thank you so much for joining us for another Bubble Tea Time. Really appreciate your time, and the players and viewers alike. Thank you so much. Thank you to our analysts, Brian Decadonu and Daniels, aka Dan Z. I forgot your name.
No.
I've been talking to you forever. It's getting late. It's 10 something here in Texas.
That's late.
Oh, I'm gonna go to sleep after this, honey. Like, I'm going.
Alright.
Really appreciate y'all coming, and thank you so much, Angela, for joining us this week as well.
Yeah, it was nice being here.
Peace out. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and see y'all on the Rift.